Preventing truth decay. Truth decay.
Cary Harrison, Reality Check, Live.
Cary Harrison with you, and thank you so much for being a member here. As you know from our weekly Los Angeles morning drive radio shows, there are many issues we can't talk about on the radio, subjects we dare not address, words we can't even say, given the administration's new FCC targeting of all public media, with the active defunding of both public radio and PBS. This has now become so real that the content you're about to hear is only available by this membership, and therefore not subject to FCC censorship or random guidelines. So I thank you from the bottom of my heart for subscribing, and I'll continue to provide you the deepest and most profound analyses that we wouldn't be able to do on the radio, even in normal times. Let me welcome you to the fractured mirror where U.S. politics don't just reflect itself, it refracts across the world. Power doesn't vanish, it mutates. And right now, American power is mutating in real time, internally unstable, externally consequential. So let's begin where all geopolitics eventually turn, inward. If democracy is the theory, and the common man knows what he wants and deserves to get it good and hard, America is finally proving the point. Let's not pretend anymore. The emperor's not just naked. He's tweeting from the tub, spying on the neighbors, and demanding you clap louder for the parade. Welcome you, yes you, to Dead Empires Don't Blink, where we take a good, long, unfiltered look at the American circus and the poor devils stuck performing under the tent. The United States isn't a two-party system. It's a duopoly with seasonal ad campaigns, and both brands are broken. One side wraps itself in the Constitution like a toddler in a superhero cape, screaming freedom, while legislating who gets to read books and who gets to vote. The other mumbles about norms, diversity, and rebuilding trust while quietly renewing surveillance authorizations and cashing checks from the same war contractors they swore they'd regulate. This isn't polarization, it's mutually assured dysfunction. But dysfunction doesn't stay in D.C., it radiates outward into courtrooms, classrooms, and your encrypted text messages that somehow still end up on a data farm in Utah. So let's talk about the panopticon in your pocket. The United States has spent 2 decades building a surveillance state in the name of national security. Then it pivoted that machine inward. Predictive policing, data brokers, counter-protest monitoring, fusion centers that can't spell, probable cause. You're not paranoid. You're late. The NSA's watching. Palantir's selling, and your local PD just bought an AI facial recognition tool with zero accountability. Built by some ex-Google engineer who thought ethics was a UX setting. Civil liberties, they're now threat vectors. Protesting in public, you're on a watch list. Whistleblowing, a felony. Lobbying for a pipeline, a tax deduction. Well, there aren't words. The U.S. isn't corrupted in the classic sense. It's optimized for legal corruption. Politicians don't take bribes. They sign speaking contracts. Insider trading? Oh, please. Congress just calls that diversifying portfolios. And when the system fails, they hold a hearing, shed a tear, then quietly rewrite the rules to help the donors avoid paying taxes and responsibility. It's not a conspiracy. It's now a business model. The American dream now comes with an NDA and a 20-year data retention policy. We all remember Biden's foreign policy doctrine: stabilize the allies, pressure the rivals, and pretend the empire isn't fraying at the seams. The U.S. says it's back, but the world not buying the product anymore. In Ukraine, American weapons pour in like prayers from a televangelist, but there's no exit strategy because there's never an exit strategy. Meanwhile, China and Russia are reading the room. Why fight the U.S. when it's already fighting itself? The pivot to Asia, still pivoting. The Middle East, unresolved trauma. Africa and Latin America, watching with crossed arms as Washington lectures about sovereignty and development while still propping up its pet oligarchs abroad. That was the Biden administration. Flash forward. So let's get existential. America isn't just at risk of losing power, it's at risk of losing reality. Deepfakes, generative AI, strategic psyops. The internet's a battleground, and the U.S. is using foam swords while China and Russia run full-spectrum influence campaigns. And don't look to the media for salvation. They're not gatekeepers anymore. It's sad, but they're also threatened. They're threatened, and they buckle. Because at the end of the day, they sell advertising, and the advertisers are threatened. So the mainstream media are now dopamine dealers. They're hooked on outrage, they're funded by clickbait, and they're slowly cannibalizing their own credibility. The press doesn't hold power accountable anymore. It licenses narratives. Think about it. So here's the kicker. The world is watching and adjusting. The EU is hedging. India is playing all sides. Corporations like Apple that should be moving their offices, their factories back to the United States. Nope, India. So it's all a big joke. If you're not paying attention, if you're not watching, they get away with it. This is the global South, and it's increasingly saying, thanks, Uncle Sam, but we're going to take our IMF loans with a side of Chinese fiber optics and Russian grain. The world isn't unipolar anymore. It's multipolar, and unfortunately, it's become cynical. America's soft power, still potent but frayed. This is what USAID was really doing. If you make sure that 20 million people are not infected with HIV, Ebola virus, Marburg virus, and it doesn't come here, that's soft power. Yes, it helps millions of people. This is good. This is who we are. It also helps us. But because TikTok dances aren't fixing global credibility and nobody's trusting a democracy that can't count votes without a lawsuit, we have billionaires with chainsaws tearing apart the fabric of civilization. And it's not just a decline story, it's a reality check. Empires don't fall in explosions. They collapse in inboxes. They collapse in courtrooms. Empires collapse in quietly retracted subpoenas. Empires decay when propaganda becomes policy, when protest becomes prosecution, when no one knows what's true, but everyone's sure it's someone else's fault. And that's where America is right now. It's still powerful, it's still dangerous, but it's fracturing. And the world? It's adapting, not to a post-American era, but to a post-coherent America. And that's why there's you right now, because you have critical thinking skills. You get it. You see what's going on. You and millions of others who don't currently have the voice they used to have. So if you've made it this far, you probably won't be running for office. Good. That means you still have a conscience. Please subscribe. Scream into the void. And for God's sake, don't believe everything with a flag on it. The United States is no longer fighting a traditional political battle. It's fighting a legitimacy war. And the front lines are domestic. Polarization isn't just red versus blue like it used to be. It's a collapse in shared reality. Two Americas, two truths, and no bridge. But deeper still, our rights are eroding. Not just in policy, but in precedent. Like 250 years of precedent. The rollback of voting rights, gerrymandering, and partisan court rulings are shifting the terrain beneath what was once assumed unshakable. Surveillance powers, once justified only by terrorism, now quietly turn inward. Activists are being flagged by algorithms. Protesters are being geofenced. Biometric data like your eyes and your fingerprints and your facial features and structures are being harvested and sold by the private sector. That includes your DNA if you ever did a DNA test. And all of this is being done under contracts that escape any meaningful scrutiny. Civil liberties? They're collateral in a war between national security and constitutional integrity. And this is not theoretical. It's now being lived by you and me, especially for black people, brown people, queer people, immigrant communities, where the apparatus of the state is more often a gauntlet than a guarantee. The Biden administration entered stage left some years ago under a banner, "America is back," but the applause faded quickly, didn't it? And the project of restoring norms hit a wall, not just because of Republican obstruction, but because the norms themselves had already rotted. Transparency was promised, surveillance was still expanded. Police reform was pledged, and qualified immunity became untouched. Whistleblowers are prosecuted, while war criminals and lobbyists walk free. The result? A moral fog, one where corruption is legal if it's systemic and secrecy is patriotic if it protects power. All this while federal ethics bodies lack teeth. Insider trading in Congress is now a punchline, and campaign financing is indistinguishable from legalized bribery. Abroad, these fractures broadcast like static, undermining credibility with every leak, every hack, every black budget revelation. Ukraine's war, it's real, it's brutal, it's unresolved, and while American hardware flows east, American willpower is fraying here at home. What began as an emblem of democratic resolve has become a congressional bargaining chip. Aid to Kiev is now filtered through the lens of American dysfunction, government shutdowns, border bills, election theatrics, posing as the Pope, whatever. Meanwhile, Russia is playing the long game. It's betting that the U.S. can't hold attention longer than an election cycle. And NATO? It expands, yes, but beneath the surface, the question still looms. Can Europe trust an America that doesn't trust itself? Segment 4, China and the surveillance paradox. The U.S. is framing China as the surveillance state. And it is. But here's the paradox. America's surveillance apparatus is vast too. FISA courts, remember them? Palantir contracts, NSA loopholes. The data doesn't stop at borders, it's now bleeding inward. American exceptionalism is compromised when your data privacy, or data, if you're a Star Trek fan, if your data privacy mirrors authoritarian models, American exceptionalism becomes compromised. And this undermines global digital diplomacy. It's everything now. When Washington criticizes Chinese tech dominance, Beijing responds, wait a minute, look at your own backdoor exploits. Look at your own encryption backdoors. Semiconductor wars and satellite arrays are one battlefield, but the battle for digital trust, well, that's what's going to decide the next century's alliances. And right now, we have one guy in charge of everything, including the satellites above your head. Everything you say, every text you send, every email you write, everything is now cataloged and stored. If the laws change, is any of that usable? We saw moves by the Health and Human Services leader, Bobby Kennedy, to force parents of children who have autism to register them, much as we saw Jewish people in World War II being forced to register by their government. And now many parents are refusing even to have their children assessed because they don't know where that information is going to go. And is it going to be held against them? Are the children going to be rounded up for their own protection and stored somewhere? All of these are real questions, first time ever having to be asked in the United States of America.
Reality Check Live. Reality Check Live.
Reality Check Live.
Reality Check Live.
Former President Joe Biden wanted out, but the region pulled him back. The U.S. is funding Israel while lecturing about proportionality. It sanctions Iran while quietly negotiating back channels, and it relies on Saudi oil while scolding Riyadh's human rights abuses. Except, of course, when it doesn't do that. American foreign policy here is a hall of mirrors. It always was, but now everyone can see them. Every principle has an exception now. Every red line is completely elastic. And in that vacuum, regional actors like Turkey, Qatar, the UAE, they're pursuing their own visions of order. Now, we as the U.S., we're still a player, but no longer are we the dealer. The global South is watching, it's calculating. They see America's lectures on freedom while protesters are kettled in D.C. The global South hears calls for anti-corruption abroad while billionaires buy influence just right in front of everyone in complete plain sight. So what do? They hedge. How do they hedge? They take Chinese ports, Russian fertilizer, Western tech. They're not picking sides, they're picking terms. This is not non-alignment. It's strategic independence, and it's rational. Because the old system, the one where Washington led and the world followed, is dying of its own contradictions. And it's not you and me doing this. It's extra-governmental at this point in our own government. 2024 wasn't just an election, was it? It was a credibility test for democracy itself. Deep fakes, synthetic media, algorithmic manipulation. We have entered officially the era where seeing is no longer believing. And American institutions aren't ready for this. Election deniers are running for office. Disinformation is spreading faster than fact checks. And media ecosystems are built for rage, not rigor. The few organizations, the public radio, public television, and a handful of newspapers still fight for rigor. But the rest are looking for rage, and rage creates a policy and a politics that you and I are watching unfold in front of us. What can we do about it? Well, we can talk to each other. We can explain to each other what's happening, and we can attenuate much of this. This worry isn't just a contested result about the 2024 election. The worry is a result that no one believes regardless of truth. I'm going to say that again. The worry now is a result that no one believes regardless of the truth. And if that continues to happen, the geopolitical cost is going to be more massive than we're seeing now. Because a democracy that can't secure its own narrative is a gift to every autocrat alive. So here's the bottom line. America is still the world's most powerful actor, but it's an actor unraveling on stage in full view. Surveillance, civil rights erosion, corruption without consequence. These aren't side plots. They're core signals. They tell allies, proceed with caution. They tell adversaries, you might just outlast this empire. And they tell us here at home, those watching from inside the eye of the storm, that geopolitics don't begin with the border, they begin with the mirror. If this helped you see the board more clearly, please subscribe, become a member here. I'm going to keep on decoding the proxies, the fractures, the falsehoods, and the power behind the podiums. If you've got a theory, a lead, a contradiction you can't let go of, please send it in. Until next time, stay sharp, stay skeptical, and remember, don't just follow the story, study the terrain. Cary Harrison with you, and I look forward to talking to you next time.
Reality Check Live. Reality Check Live.
Reality Check Live.
Reality Check Live.
CaryHarrison.com.